Hi, everyone. Roger Connect, president of Universal Accounting Center, and I'm today joined by Todd Manion with Pro Success. He happens to actually be a very successful accounting professional that has a wonderful story to share, and I'm excited for him to kind of enlighten us as to the journey that he has. So, Todd, welcome.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
Yeah, this is going to be fun. So one of the things that really struck me is when we got to know one another, you started in Texas and had this thriving business. Well, what I want to do is I want to backtrack a little bit further, though, and have you first share a little bit of the story as to how you even got drawn into the accounting profession.
Sure. Yeah, I started, I guess my first accounting jobs were bookkeeping and very light clerical work. Yeah, in college, I intended to be a business consultant, was studying economics, and, over the summer jobs would do some accounting work. Switched my major to accounting after I was very close to graduating with an economics degree, and finished my master's degree in accounting. Decided that Brigham Young has one of the best accounting programs, and that would be a much better resume builder than being an economics major. Further, I didn't enjoy the higher level economics classes as much as I enjoyed the lower level ones. So anyway, became an economics or an accounting major kind of a little bit by happenstance. Really wanted a good job when I got out of school, but wasn't sold on the accounting profession per se. Didn't think I'd be there overly long. Thought I wanted to do consulting. It fit really well. I ended up at one of the big four accounting firms doing audits. So that's where I cut my teeth in the accounting profession. A few years in to that, I got offered a CFO job, which was totally unexpected. And frankly, I thought it was kind of out of my league at the moment. I should have been smart enough at the time to ask the critical questions. Why is someone offering someone that's only got a few years of accounting experience a CFO job? And that lack of insight, or that lack of questioning, why would someone offer me this job? I think it came back to bite me a little bit. I showed up at my first day of that job, and they said, so this is a small family-owned business, manufacturing company, and they just hired me as their CFO, and I'm underqualified. And I show up the first day, and they say, "Okay, great. We're so glad you're here because they just cut off our line of credit. The IRS is going to be here tomorrow to audit us. The state sales tax will be here on Thursday, and we don't have enough money to make payroll on Friday. So welcome to your new job." And I just left, Deloitte to come do this, and that was a little bit, at that moment I thought maybe this would be a good time for me to turn tail and run out the door. But what happened through that experience was I learned how to do and solve real finance and accounting problems. That was a true, turnaround. There were many things that needed to be. They had no financial statements when I got there, none. So it was, how do you go from no real accounting, cash in, cash out is all they ever did, and then make accounting a tool for business decision making. So we began to make the decisions of that business, where to open new stores, what showrooms that we had open were not making money, how to really make our manufacturing work correctly, incentivizing your salesmen to sell on margins rather than sell on the top line with discounts. There were a lot of things that we changed to make that business quite profitable. So
your story with all that is just incredible. One of the things that I think is quite interesting is you have a very common story as to your entrance into accounting. It wasn't one that is, I'm in high school and I'm enthralled with the profession, I have family that are in it and I'm going to pursue it. You kind of gravitated towards it, embraced it, and then kind of followed that traditional path. But what was, I think, quite interesting is what I refer to as baptism of fire experience in the accounting world. Is you got that opportunity to really kind of have that wonderful career move. you're taking that jump into being that CFO. I'm sure that was something that was quite exhilarating and fun to be offered. And then you walk in and it's just like, what did I just step myself into? And so many people can relate to the idea of they've taken on these clients or these roles and they find that they're just in it's like a scary movie. It's a disaster that you're now experiencing, but it sounds like you really were able to pivot that company, transition that business, and really get them on a more solid footing.
Yeah, in fact, what that led to from there really shaped my career. What that experience gave me was a knowledge that you can turn things around, you can use accounting proactively. But as I got that experience and as I got the company turned around, they were small enough that they really didn't need me full time once I got everything going. So a couple years later, I'm like, well, I'm really only doing accounting a couple days a week now, right? And I'm spending the rest of my time doing operational things for them. And I really enjoyed the accounting side. And at that time, I met my future business partner, and he'd had a similar experience where he'd done a CFO role and had transitioned it from a full-time role to a smaller, a couple day a week role. And we thought there's got to be a lot of smaller businesses that need a good quality CFO, but only a day or two a week. Mm-hmm. And that's when we started Now CFO. So if I hadn't gone through that experience and that turnaround, I would have not ever felt, I think, qualified to do what I did at Now CFO, which was the next big step in my career.
Well, the other thing that I think comes from that is just the confidence. You now have experienced the transition that you can be a part of. And at that point, you're now not only just confident you can do it, but you're competent. You have the experience to draw from to literally then help these other businesses. So tell us about this journey with Now CFO.
Okay, sure. Now CFO, when we started, my partner that I mentioned, he had a couple of employees that were working for his one client. And so we had this vision, okay, we're going to start doing this outsourced CFO work, which was like anything, like any startup, we didn't pattern it very well off of anyone else. I wasn't actually aware that anyone else was doing fractional CFO like that for small businesses at the time. And that industry has taken off, but at the time we didn't know anyone else that was doing it. And that naivety, I guess, led us to a little bit of a creating our own type of model. Most people in that space hire or contract CFOs that are unemployed people. They say, okay, you're an experienced CFO. If you can go find yourself a client, you can use our branding. Our model was quite different. We would hire full-time people. They would be our employees. And we took all the risk then when they weren't busy. So that led to my next, and our business then is to put these people, these senior level CFOs and controllers at a part-time basis at multiple clients. Mm-hmm. That led us, we were in one market in Salt Lake when we started, but soon after, several months after, I opened back into Dallas, which is where I audited. So I started our Dallas office from scratch, and the journey there, which led us over the next 10 years from me sitting in Dallas by myself to practice with 14 offices and several hundred employees. I think that was a fun journey. I always like to keep clients myself, and I always have felt that was an important part of, as we had partners that they always had their own clients. We never really had people who were not working and selling. I think that was one of the things that was successful for us.
So having gone through that experience, I'm sure you've got some amazing stories. One of which I'm going to ask as to your experiences with international accounting, but share with me, what kind of service did you provide to a client that you really felt made a difference and you felt that the client appreciated it? Could you have a story that you might be able to share about some transition that you also experienced with Now CFO?
Sure. A couple almost all my clients that I worked with were very different. So I had some of my own personal clients. On the large side, I did $1 billion carve out from Tyco Electronics. They sold $1 billion piece of their business, power supply manufacturer, global. And I functioned as the CAO of that business during look back financial creation and eventual an S1 offering. So that was my largest client that, if I'm talking revenue wise as a consultant, I spent several years on and off. And I think then the interesting part was I would change roles as they would hire their full-time employees into roles, then I would transition to a different interim space. And I had a staff of 8 people full-time on that engagement at its largest point. So, and that was ironically one of my very first clients I ever signed, which was created a tremendous amount of stress on our growing business. I'll share you an entrepreneurial story as I think about that. You think of when you're starting your business as an accountant, right? Many of us go through this process where we're, okay, I'm going to go off on my own, right? And it's just me. And that's a big step to take, right? It's scary. The next big step is when I go hire an employee. Now I'm at a really scary point, because now if I don't keep that person busy, I'm in a lot of trouble, because this is coming out of my pocket, right? And we all maybe that are sitting in this call, we've gone through one of those steps, or we're thinking about going through one of those steps. For me, I'd signed this huge client. Okay, they told me, we're going to need 6 people on Monday. At the time, I had 3 employees. So I'm like, okay, everybody drop what we're doing. And over the weekend, I got to find out how to get more people on this engagement. Showing up at the engagement and getting everybody engaged was great. And our bill rates were better than I'd had on any of the other stuff we've done. And I'm very excited about it. And as we get rolling into it, they say, okay, well, our terms are, we're going to pay you net 30. Okay, that's fine. Net 30 is fine. However, I've got 2 payrolls between now and then, and now I have 6 employees and very little, so I'm not really stressed at this point, because my bill rates are great. This is a large company. But at 30 days, they tell me, I'm sorry, we're going to have to switch. We're switching all of our vendors to a 60-day. Okay, I'm not as excited about this. I now know I have to come up with a month of payroll for my employees, all of which are fairly highly compensated people. And I don't have, necessarily just the net worth to back this. So my business partner and I are trying to figure out how we're going to fund this and how we're going to deal with it. And we get to 60 days and they say, we're taking all vendors to 90 days. And at this point, I'm not only a little bit nervous, I'm scared. Right, I'm funding, and I don't want my employees, this is a new business, I don't want them to know that I'm stressing out about this. So I'm having to go to work every day with a smile on my face and get important things done at the client and make a difference. But I'm not sleeping at this point very well at night. And at 90 days, I'm thinking for surely they're not going to push any of their vendors. At 90 days, the other big consulting group, the actual large national brand that was out there with us, had billed, I don't know, something in the tune of $10 million over the course of their year or so there. They tell them they're not going to pay their last set of invoices, and they're going to cut them off for about $500,000 worth of fees and just short them on it. And you're fired. Bye, everyone. And now I'm dying, right? Now I'm thinking this is fantastic. I've now leveraged everything. My partner's leveraged everything. We have a great big receivable sitting out here, and the company we're working for has now just shown us that they're willing to stiff the professional services firms. And we're talking, it's about November now. Christmas is canceled at my house. Everything, because they say, okay, we're going to pay you at 120 days. So I'm 4 months in, heavy payroll for me. And my last breath. And the week before Christmas, they cut me my first check.
Oh my.
And they continued to pay us 4 months late for the next 3 years. And they cut us those checks. So yes, sometimes starting your own business can be scary.
So what you're sharing there is something that I would imagine almost everyone on this call has experienced to some degree or another, where they, like you said, the entrepreneur, they take the risk. And what we experience is that as that entrepreneur is we have the long vision, but oftentimes that stress in the short run is just excruciating. And you said it best when you said, and you went to work with that smile on the face. You have to be that one that ensures confidence in the employees to believe that everything's going to be okay. You're the leader and you're going to get them through this. And oftentimes they're completely unaware of all these goings on, and yet you're dealing with them and you're maneuvering things behind the scenes to make sure everyone is able to work efficiently and effectively, comfortably. And that's just, I think, an amazing thing. And so definitely something that I don't encourage anyone to experience, but I think it's the reality of what business is like. It's all these chess pieces that are being moved around, and it's not getting paid in the timeline expected, and it's expenses coming through. Cash flow is king. We all know that. So that story, I think, not only was very important and very telling, but I could sense the emotion behind it. You definitely lived that, and I appreciate that. So one thing that I'd like to then say is, what advice would you give to someone who's in the process of starting their business?
Lots of advice, especially in the accounting world. One is for accountants, understand that accounting and the deliverable of a financial statement is not the end of the story, right? I think a lot of times we as accountants look at it and say, okay, ta-da, here's a financial. And that isn't what's going to drive success in our business, right? What's going to drive success in our business or our client's business is the ability to use the information we're gathering from those financials. And that will define your success in your business, and it will define your client's success. And because of that, if you've got that mindset that I need to find the things that will drive success, your clients will value you 10,000 times more than if you view that you're finished with your job the minute you hand them a tax return or hand them a financial statement. I guess other small pieces that I think have made me successful, accountability is really important to me. Understanding that if I can understand what it is that's going to be a measurable thing to define success. Now, I don't consider myself a micromanager. I don't want to know. So if I'm setting a goal, let's talk about, I've got an outbound call center and they're setting appointments for me. I could say, well, you have to make 20 calls an hour, and that's what's going to define success. Well, maybe that's an important thing that if you do will lead you to success. But if I'm talking about how do I measure success from that, it's how many appointments did you get? And so if I can say, how many appointments did you set during the day? To me, that's a measurable number that I can say, okay, this person is succeeding at what I need their role to achieve for me. Whereas the person who's getting that appointment, I might say, okay, are you closing at least 30% of those into a revenue generating business, right? And so that's a measurable thing and then I can correct the course if they're not achieving whatever we've set as the metrics. So having metrics and having measurable metrics, I think, is a huge element to succeeding as any business. But specifically when you're taking those risky steps, how am I going to add my first employee? Okay, well, how am I going to, they're never going to be as passionate as you are about your business, ever. So how do I measure their success? Your first salesman, so many of us have poor success hiring salespeople. as entrepreneurs, frequently we're the ones that do the sales at the beginning. We've gotten all of our clients, and now we've gotten to a certain size that we've got to hire a sales team, and we strike out frequently. And I think that can be mitigated to some degree by measuring their success in smaller increments.
So two things that I'm taking from that, and it's first and foremost, I loved how you gave value to the client as to the accounting information they're receiving. So often I think it's too often the accounting profession is delivering these financials and checking it off as one and done. The assignment's completed, it's accurate, so I'm finished. And in reality, that's where the client gets that wrong impression of accounting is just this necessary evil that I have to deal with in order to be in business. Where what we need to do is we need to be much more engaged and compelling to share the information to the business owner in a way that they're able to now use the information to make more informed, intelligent business decisions. If they start to see that they're smarter because of the information we're providing, that we're actually giving insights to the business that they didn't otherwise have, then all of a sudden we become essential to their success, and they see value in what we're bringing to the table because they're more intelligently managing the company. And so all of a sudden the services we're providing have value, have worth, and that then turns it from being this necessary evil to this essential asset to the successes they're experiencing, because critical decisions that they've made based on cash flow and investment and transitions in the company were based upon the information that they know they received from the accounting. And so all of a sudden you become that integral part of the business. So well said. The other thing that I really liked is you were talking about these metrics, identifying those key metrics that we're using in our business to know when to make the right decisions or what is success, defining that. And I have to agree with you. I think too often these are things that we say to our clients. These are things that we start to draw attention to for our clients, but we don't have them for ourselves. We're not looking at our own metrics, and we're not identifying what is our success with our own business plan, for example. So it's really kind of practicing what we preach, if nothing else. So there you go.
Right.
So tell me now what you're doing today. Share with us what's going on now.
So after I sold my my practice, my CFO outsourcing practice, I started doing practice development for professional service companies. And a lot of what I did towards the end of my time at Now CFO was opening new markets and training partners how to run a successful practice. A lot of the hiring that you do, and I think many of you sitting out there probably understand, we are trained as accountants. We are not necessarily trained to be partners in accounting firms. And this is a similar thing for engineers, lawyers, IT people. It's what technically makes us an excellent accountant doesn't necessarily translate to how do we run a successful accounting firm, or how do we sell accounting services? How do we hire good accountants? Even the largest of the accounting firms do very little soft skills training. They might have a once a year class. You do the class and now you know how to do it. Well, the reality is this is not an easy thing to transition to. So the more successful practices, especially, and I'll say the other inflection point that's very challenging, the switch from wherever this happens in your career, where you're the one responsible for 4 or 5 staff people, 4 or 5 employees, and you're thinking, how am I going to grow, right? How am I going to make myself go to the next market, or I need to add a new partner, or I need to, because right now so much sits on my shoulders. That transition is challenging, and I think I spend a large majority of my time now helping people through that type of a transition. I view that there's 4 real pillars to success in a professional service company. Regardless of what type it is, you have to be able to deliver excellent service. You have to be able to sell those services. You have to be able to staff those services correctly. And you have to bill and collect for the services that you've done. And failure to do any one of those properly leads to pain, leads to cash flow problems, um, and the sleepless nights that we all want to avoid. So my practice now is helping accounting firms and other professional service firms find the balance there, figure out which area they maybe are not doing as well. You know, they might be doing great on the service side, but the people side, their turnovers, you know, they've got too much turnover. They're losing people and they don't know why. So how do we understand whether it's an actual recruiting or a training? You know, what's causing the people to turn over, or is it sales? You know, why are we never? You know, I see this cycle where you know you put all this effort into sales, everybody goes crazy for sales. You get the client, and then everybody's busy, and then the client finishes, and then oh my gosh, we got to start all over again. And it becomes a jerky revenue flow. So that's what I do now. I help service companies manage their company, learn to grow it. I'm actually in Orange County right now doing a IT company, helping them expand into a new market. So
that is wonderful. So one of the things that I'm hearing here is a lot of the academic and the formal training that one receives doesn't necessarily position them for the other roles that are needed in the professional services business. So speaking to accounting professionals, yes, you may be an excellent accountant. You're as a CPA, accountant, enrolled agent, you're probably very good. You know the laws, you know the different ins and outs of running the financial side of the business. But are you business savvy, sales savvy? Do you have the soft skills that you mentioned, interact with teams and create a culture in your own company that you can excel in? And so those are some of the other things that may be foreign to you. You're just not aware of the importance of culture, or you're not familiar with or aware of how to best sell services. You're great at what you do. It's just you struggle explaining them to the potential clients. So as you work with these clients and you help them individually get these skills, or you work with a firm and you help implement these strategies within their staff to help develop the partners, what are the things that you see people individually struggle with? What's that thing that causes them to stretch?
I think the first challenge I run across almost universally from accountants specifically is a mindset that they bring to the table that is, I am an introvert, or I don't want to deal with this. I didn't go into accounting because I love that side of it. I went into accounting because I like being an accountant, and you can put me in, I can crunch my numbers and I'm done. And that does not translate to the senior levels, right? So that mindset frequently, where I'm engaged, the partner group has said, okay, we want you to train our managers, prepare them to be partners. Okay, I get there and frequently the manager's like, well, I don't want to do that. I don't want to sell. And I can't sell. That's the more troubling. That I don't want to is usually pretty frequently overcome, right? They understand that they're going to have to be a part of that if they're going to be a partner in a firm. But the I can't, that mindset is really got to be tackled pretty quickly. And the I can't is defeated by, this is a skill just like any other skill. And just because you have a propensity to be an introvert, you would prefer to not have to be the one that's closing on the sale. These are real skills, and practice and learning them, and we can achieve some real success, and you can learn how to do it. So I think that's the biggest message early on that I have to work with accountants to understand that, yeah, something may be uncomfortable, but so is everything when you first get started. Think about your career. Think about the first day when you graduated and you got your, master's degree, and now you're going to go be an auditor. Think how uncomfortable you were at that moment. You have a master's degree in accounting, and now you're going to go be an auditor, and you don't know what you're doing, and you're uncomfortable. It's the same with any of the other skills, the soft skills as well. Interviewing can be uncomfortable for people, but there are ways you can learn how to do it better.
So there's two things that I think I can offer as part of this is we've been for years using a term that we've coined that we say it's becoming an accountrepreneur. It's embracing the accounting that we love and the accountant we are, and it's realizing that there are some other hats we have to put on to go to this next level in our career. And that entrepreneur hat for many people wasn't something they were aspiring for or thought they needed, but at some point they realize I'm going to have to do this. And they start to put on these entrepreneur hats. And as they put those hats on, they start to realize that these personal skills, interpersonal skills start to become very important, these sales skills and so forth. But you're right, it's all teachable. If you can take it down to someone in a very concise way, they're intelligent people and they can figure this out. And if they're shown a process that they can embrace, all of a sudden it starts to make sense. And it's like, okay, I can do this. And it's not as hard as I made it up in my mind to be. But one thing I'd also add is I have found personally that the older someone is in their career, the further along they are, they've built up this imaginary phobia of these things that it is harder the older they get to kind of address them. Not impossible, but what it is they come with these stereotypes or impressions that you have to address, basically face on, head on, in order to help them realize it's not that scary. Personally, I was experiencing it where years and years ago, I thought sales was an evil thing. It was the dirty car salesman that basically was out there just trying to get the sale and wasn't interested in the customer's best interest. I had to get over the fact that as a salesperson myself, that's not who I am. I'm genuinely interested in the person's success that I'm working with. I want to help them, and what I'm offering I feel is a solution to their need. And if I started to see it that way, my own perception of what I was becoming wasn't dirty. I was able to actually say, I'm a nice guy, I'm a good guy, and I have their best interests at heart here. I'm just trying to help them resolve a situation they're experiencing with what I feel is the right solution. And if they agree, then it's their money and they can pay for it. So my point is simply to say, I agree with you. There's a lot of people out there that have put these mental mind blocks in, and what they need to do is just kind of be open, just share them, let's talk through them, and in the end, they are surmountable. And honestly, I've seen some very good people that did not see themselves as being successful salespeople, business people, really excel once they just had a moment to kind of think it through and process it. So, well said.
Thank you. Yeah, the possession of that technical knowledge positions you to be an excellent salesperson. So it's almost, from the other side, you take a professional salesperson and say, now you need to get enough accounting knowledge to be good at selling. That can be an even harder transition. So
I would agree with that. Yeah. Now here's the next thing. So you've got your services that you're now offering to accounting firms, helping individuals themselves migrate or move into that partner type role. You're helping firms groom people within their firms to have that transition. So let's talk about a business owner. They have an established firm, they have employees. What advice would you have for them as an owner of a firm listening to this to realize, what is my next step with my successful practice? I've got this firm, what now?
Yeah, I think one of the things that helped us a lot was having a true strategic plan that we updated regularly. I've always tried to say, here's what our goals are going to be 5 years out, and backing into a 1-year plan. I know that's something everyone is supposed to do, but setting enough time aside to really update your strategy, and then measure your success against your strategic goals. At least quarterly, 3 times a year, something where you're trying to make sure you hit those goals that you talked about. So that setting enough time aside for strategy is an important piece, because it's so easy to get dialed down into our day-to-day fires and assume that we're making the best decisions based on all the chaos that may be surrounding us at the moment.
Well said. Yeah, one of the things that I actually propose quite often is what we practice here, and we have a quarterly retreat. That quarterly retreat is designed to actually work on the business, where we step aside from everything. We look at how are we progressing towards the goals that we've already established. But then the other thing is working with a coach. There's a lot to be said for accountability. And when you're the owner of a firm, oftentimes what happens is you can, like every other person, just go through this rationalizing, justifying of why you aren't maybe hitting the things that you're expecting your employees to do, but somehow you get that get out of jail free card, and some of the things that you feel are important sometimes get procrastinated, and you stop hitting the milestones in the timeline that you've established. And what I've found that's been critical personally even is working with a coach. The coach makes sure that things are progressing and they're hitting the timelines, because if I don't work with a coach, I feel like even myself, there's sometimes that I can just procrastinate things moving forward. And so it's working with that coach that assists me to be more accountable even to myself. And so that's something I also teach a lot of the people that I work with that have their firms and really want to get serious about their business. So here's the next question. Where do you see the accounting profession going from here? What do you see on the horizon?
So I've had some interesting insights. The client I worked with earlier this year, we did transformations for large companies. So a lot of accounting process engineering, and I ended up speaking and doing some stuff with like the AICPA in New York. What I found is everyone is talking, and you've heard it, everyone's talking robotics, everyone's talking automation. And to some degree, I thought, that's, is that really going to affect us that much? And after listening to some of the larger companies, Coca-Cola, some of these other companies present, I think that it's something we ought to be taking some serious preparation for. Our roles as true accountant bookkeepers are going to change. That is going to happen. And some of the things that we do that are automatable will be automated. And if the big companies are doing it, as it becomes price competitive and pushes down into the lower market, the small businesses will find automation begins to rule their world a bit. So I think accountants better be ready to become much more tech savvy. How do we be the ones that are programming these robots to do the automated tasks? One insight, I guess I'll share, I thought was kind of funny is, everybody goes to these conferences and talks about, we need, RPA, I need RPA and RPA. And I'm like, oh, that's awesome. You have Excel on your laptop, right? And yes. And you use macros every day, right? Well, no. Well, you realize that if you're not using macros, that all RPA does is go into Excel and run macros. So if you can't program a macro right now, you're not prepared. We're stepping over a huge step, I guess, is what I would say. So getting your staff or you up to speed and realizing that we can't say, well, this technology's not for me. It's, that I think would be my place I see accounting going.
I love it. No, I would agree with you 100%. One of the things that I have come to realize, and I'm quite passionate about this, is if you look at the evolution of accounting going back, say, 50 years ago, when software became available and we worked away from that visor kind of look where we were actually handwriting in ledgers and journals and recording all the transactions. Once software came on, it basically accelerated what once took, let's say, days, weeks, or months to prepare as financials, to now with reporting software, you have the ability with some of the software today to just simply put in date ranges and produce reports. My point is to share that what's collapsing is accounting used to be this recording or presenting of a historical experience. Here's what the business was 2 months ago or a week ago. So much of what the AI provides today is real-time accounting. the business owner has available to them the numbers of instantly, right now, what is in the bank account, instantly, right now, through dashboards. Here are what's going on with my receivables, my payables, how my aged receivables look. And they have this dashboard in front of them as to, here's the snapshot of this immediate moment. What the accounting profession is needing to provide, and it's spot on with what you said, is we need to become the experts as to, for each of our clients, what technologies they ought to be implementing to have the information they need. So there's a number of these plugins and platforms and so forth that are, I think, very essential to the client's success with having access to the numbers, and they're looking to the accountant to have the technological savvy, the where-how, as to what software programs, what tools and plugins ought to be used, but also setting them up and managing them. The accountant is going to be the person that's going to be the go-to individual that, I need this number and I don't have it, go get the number for me. I need this information so I can make a better informed decision. And it's basically, who's giving me that information? The second thing is, we're becoming much more important as to being a translator. Here are the numbers. Let me tell you what this is saying, what this means. Here's what the ratios are. Here are the red flags that you need to be watching for. And we're the interpreter. But then the last thing is I think more and more what the accounting is it's going to become less and less historical, more real time, but soon it's going to be more projections. It's going to be, here's where I am now. What does the trend say I'm going to be experiencing in the next day, week, or month? And accounting is going to be less and less that historical real time, and it's going to be more real time forward thinking. And the better you are as an accountant, able to know and be familiar with the technologies out there and can help your client use them and then see into the future, you're spot on still now as an accounting professional. You still have need and purpose, and now you're getting paid, I think, more for the services you're providing and less for the recording of transactions, which is becoming commoditized. You're going to make more money, in other words.
I agree. Totally agree.
Yeah, this is fun stuff. What we're seeing here is a change in old school accounting. They're going to retire and get pushed out. The younger ones, the more ambitious ones, the ones that are tech savvy, are going to be stepping in. And unfortunately, there's too few entering the accounting profession. But that means for those that are in, it's definitely going to be a much more lucrative experience because your needs are greater.
I think making the mistake of saying, well, IT is going to deal with that. That's a big mistake. We as accountants, if we have every chance we can to grab whatever responsibilities we can from that IT department and get ourselves integrated and get ourselves understanding what's happening there, I think that's the future of accounting.
I agree. Yes. Every time I go to the accounting conferences, I'm always paying attention to who the vendors are, who are the ones that are doing the plugins to the accounting software, whether it be QuickBooks, Xero, Sage, it doesn't matter. What are the plugins that add to the value of that software platform? And those, if you're familiar as an accountant with what each of those are for, what industries, where they're best applied and utilized, you leverage those with your clients, you become the savior they're needing. So that's how I see it.
Agreed.
Very good. So any parting thoughts, anything that you'd like to add to this?
Oh, I really appreciate you letting me come visit with you. It's fun to relive some of those memories.
Especially hindsight 2020, and they're gone and over.
Right, absolutely.
Well, you're a great man. I have to honestly say that meeting with you for lunch the other day was a pleasure. It was a joy. I enjoyed our conversations, even just on the discussions of travel and your experiences there. You're an amazing person. You've lived an amazing life. You've got an amazing journey going on right now. I wish you the best in your current endeavors. And most importantly, just want to say congratulations on having a successful career in accounting. That you're just doing great. I think a lot of people have been inspired by what we've heard today.
Thanks a lot.
You bet. Todd, have a wonderful day. And everybody just remember this. If it's about accounting, it's universal. Look in the descriptions below and I'll put some applicable information there for you to pull from. Everybody take care and have a great day.
Thanks.